Like moths to a flame, you've thrown caution to the wind for a glimpse into our world. Well, now you're in it.
Welcome to Effed Up Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we are continuing on with Near-Death Experience Week. This one we're doing tonight is also another user submission sent in by Joe Cerletti. And he sent that in on July 12th. If you want to read it on the official site, by the way, the original, it's titled NDE Opened My Third Eye. And Joey's story has to do with, an attempted suicide due to depression. Before we jump into that, I'd just like to shout out again, if you have your own effed up story on the paranormal, or you have pictures or video, we'd like to get that from you. And we'll put it on the website and get it into a podcast. You can get your effed up material to us. The official website is effedupstories.com. It's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. Hit the menu, go to submissions, fill out the form, hit submit. We have it. And with that having been said, we're going to jump back into Joe's story here. And depression's a very common thing, and suicide's a common thing. So it's an interesting look at near-death experiences, as they are said often to be different for people who commit suicide, because it's a forbidden thing. Even though I don't necessarily agree with that, I feel if you're hurting that bad that you go there, then I don't really think you should have to be disciplined for that. But anyway, we're going to jump into Joe's story and look at some of the common things that happens here and happens in other near-death experiences involving people who try to commit suicide. So as he starts, he was very depressed at one point in his life. And one day, he took an overdose of opiates. And in this particular case, it was Vicodin. And the last thing that he remembers was that he was in his bathroom with the door locked, but somehow he managed to get back to the couch, which he attributes for saving his life. So the next thing that happens after this point, it was that he felt like he was in a dream, but he was just in this place. He didn't know how he got there. He was there. And this is something that he kind of goes over a couple times. He really doesn't understand how he just got there. He said everything was white. There was no ground. There was no walls. Just a simple door in front of him. And there was a man next to him with a very tight grip on his arm. And he kept repeating the words, "Once you go through the door, you never go back." And he said that this man kept repeating this line over and over again. Once you go through that door, you can never go back. And Joe had the feeling that something was wrong. He felt like, and he compared it to being sent to the principal's office. like he knew he was going to be lectured. He knew he was in trouble. He was waiting to be, talked to or disciplined for what he had done. And he just kept saying to himself, I don't want to go through the door. I don't want to go through the door. And he said he got so close, or they got so close, the other man as well. And he said that the man reached for a key card that he had to swipe at the door as if to, you needed that to get in. And he said the next thing he remembers, he was being injected with adrenaline by his friend, and he woke up. And he said, when he woke up, he cried for a good 2 hours straight. And he called his loved ones to tell him how much he missed him and how short life is. And it's something that kind of scarred his mind, and he won't ever forget. But he said ever since that had happened, he's had a lot of psychic experiences. And he believes that this experience has opened his third eye. And he said that something important to note, that his friend said that he was not breathing during this encounter. He said he had no pulse. He'd fell face first through a glass table, and that's what sent his friends rushing into the room. And he just happened to have adrenaline or Narcan, and you'll remember this from yesterday's story with their heroin addict, but he had Narcan on him as well because he had just lost a friend to an overdose. And luckily enough, he had taught his friends how to use it just in case that scenario had ever come up. And Joe said that he's clean now and has been for 5 years. So Joe, just like our submission, or the guy who submitted the story yesterday, I think that's great. Congratulations. I'm glad to hear that you're off of the drugs and that hopefully you're no longer depressed. So there's a couple things here that I think is worth talking about. One of those things is that door. The door that Joe saw on the other side, that he knew it was a boundary point, right? Like once you cross this point, there's no going back. And that's a common thing in near-death experiences. In fact, there's a couple websites that are dedicated to the research of near-death experiences and have cataloged literally thousands of them. And they also have probably 20 of the most prominent, or not prominent, but amazing, like life-altering, just really out there near-death experiences. And they break down a lot of these subjects. And in the case of these boundaries, after looking at many, like literally thousands of these things, they've been able to, without a doubt, say that, there is a case of these boundaries, and it's different for different people. Like you could have a near-death experience, and for you, it could be like a river. And nobody has to tell you that, once you cross that river, there's no coming back. Is like many people instinctively know, like there's something about it. They just know that once they cross that river, they're not coming back. Or maybe for another person, it's a light pole on a street. For another person, it's a door. But basically, it's a threshold. And what that threshold is unique to the individual in their own experience. And sometimes they're told, like in the case of Joe, he was told by a man that there's no coming back. Other times not. They're just instinctively know that there's no coming back. And I find that interesting because one of the things that you'll also read is about the silver cord. And what the silver cord is, like a baby would have an umbilical cord, right? And it goes to the mother and it provides sustenance. Well, in our spiritual body, we have what is referred to as the silver cord, and it's, instead of connecting to our stomach, it's a cord that connects from our spiritual forehead to the forehead of our human body. And apparently, This tethers you to your body so that you can only, it's almost like a safety mechanism. You can only venture so far into the other realm. And you will literally, if you reach the outer bounds of that, where it can reach, it will actually spring you back like an elastic band. And if
That's interesting. I've only ever seen mention of the silver cord in relation to astral projection, which is, I guess it's a form of it's a lot like an NDE, except without the physical. Your body's not in physical danger with an astral projection.
Well, see,
it's a purposeful.
I remembered that too, because there was a period where you and I were trying the astral projection stuff, and but it is. I mean, if you go on to they're organizations, they're non-profit organizations that have been studying near-death experiences forever, and they discuss it there as well. And there's a number of near-death experiences that they cite as examples where they reference the silver cord. I think someone named Edgar Case or Casey was one of them, and they describe
someone named Edgar Casey, the great American psychic.
Yeah, I think that's right. That sounds right. I knew the name sounded more important, but I learned so much in one day, and I forget stuff from days before. So
just like Homer Simpson.
Just like Homer Simpson, I can only fit so much in there, right? But anyway, in this case, the silver cord. Like I said, I remembered we had discussed it way back. And there it was again, and they were discussing it in a near-death experience. And I think it's like this mechanism. The more I thought about it, it's like you're not allowed to venture into the outer reaches of the other worlds until you're literally done. Like it's your time. Because they say, if you manage to cut this cord, that's it. You're done. There's no coming back. And again, just like the, those boundaries that people instinctively know that they can't cross, they know that with the silver cord as well. If this breaks, that's it. There's no coming back, right? So it's interesting, right? It's like there's these rules, these unspoken rules that we can assume from this, that there are certain answers, there's certain things we're not meant to know until we're actually over there. I mean, close calls aren't good enough, right? I mean, you can go up there. There's been tons of stories where people have spoken to Jesus or other dead relatives or like people from like way back before Jesus' time or God or whatever, and they're told all this information, the meaning of life, what their purpose was here, and you think, well, they're not holding back any secrets, but there's something, because they don't want you going out exploring these far reaches, right? So or maybe it's for our own safety, because they do say like depending on the vibration of your being, if you're like a good or a bad person or somewhere, we're all in between of these extremes. Perhaps without the silver cord, you would be sucked into a really good or negative place that you're not meant to go yet, and you can't get out of it or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, in a lot of these kinds of, whether it's near-death experience or astral projection, there definitely seems to be a set of rules that everybody has to adhere to. And, I often wonder if it's similar to, kind of like the laws of physics here. If there's a law of spiritual physics, that just governs everything, some kind of system that is just in place as it's just as natural in the spirit world as gravity or thermodynamics is here in the physical universe. Because you got to wonder, well, if these are the rules, who made them, or why is it that way? Because it's not along any kind of any kind of religious line, or there's no particular philosophical bend to it. It's just it just is.
Yeah, the more I look at it, the more complex it seems. Like a lot of people have it in their head that once you die, it's heaven or hell, right? But the more that I read, and not just stories and I guess theories, but I mean from people who allegedly have crossed over, is that there are many, many, many. I mean, there's as many different layers to the afterlife as there is beads of sand on the earth, right? I mean, there's just infinite different possibilities, and there does seem to be these rules in place, and as ourselves, when we get up there, I mean, understandably, at first it seems really new, and there's all these new experiences, but there's also a sense of familiarity that many people speak of. Like they remember being in a certain room, or they remember waiting for similar to how they are now. They're waiting for something to happen, or for someone to come, and I've read like people have felt very strong senses of deja vu. Like I've done this before. I've done this many times. I've waited here to be judged, or to be shown my life review, or to be shown whatever the case is. And so, I mean, that's strange, right? So I almost feel like if you had been there long enough in your near-death experience, that you would probably discover that it would come flooding back eventually. Your past lives. I mean, some people do say that there are things like that they're shown when they get there, but they can't retain it. They get back here, and it's gone. Like they can remember certain things, but they know there's things that they were shown that they just can't take back. It was like robbed from their brain. And that reminds me of what you said before with like mushroom trips and DMT trips, where you're showing some kind of you have some kind of a revelation, and when you get back, there's just no way to articulate it, or you whatever it is you got, it starts to fall away from you, similar to like a dream. When you first wake up, you got it. It's so vibrant in your memory, and then
I've spent a lot of time thinking about stuff along those lines. What the hell could that be? And I guess my own personal take on it is, perhaps it's some form of multi-dimensional information. If you have some kind of information in your in your consciousness, which we're going to say is separate from your actual flesh and blood brain, perhaps multi-dimensional information that is beyond the three dimensions, isn't the human brain can't really process it. There's no way for it to translate into the physical. Likewise, I guess when it comes to some of the experiences that people have when they cross over to the other side, and being the remembering the past lives, there's this whole aspect of where here we're stuck in one dimension of time. Time moves forward in one direction here in this universe. We can't go back. We're just stuck in this constant streaming forward, and perhaps in different realms, our access of time becomes greater, and that's why there's this sudden remembering of all the past. There's this access to it that we wouldn't have necessarily, because all cross sections of time exist kind of simultaneously. You're always alive, you're always dead, you're always and you're always this past life, you're always in your future life, you're always in your present life, and there's this, you know, this coexistence of all the different points along the timeline. And again, you know, it's a very difficult concept to even discuss, even if you understand it. But then to try and translate that information back to the three physical dimensions and one time dimension, you know, it would make sense how the brain would just be forced to just dump it. You know, it's like, nope, can't compute. Sorry.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great point, and that's kind of what I was thinking, is that your body is limited in you know, what it can take with it. Like your brain can't take certain things into the physical realm. The last thing I want to point out with Joe's story is a common thread that again happened in our previous near-death experience story, where he came back changed. Joe came back, and ever since that happened, now he says that he feels that he has opened his third eye and he's been having psychic experiences. Now our last one, again, that was a drug addict who had a near-death experience. He was, you know, since his experience, he would have frequent bouts of sleep paralysis, and he would, you know, be trying to go to sleep on the couch, and you know, he'd jump out of a sleeping state because he had a very strong sense that someone was watching him. So this was all new to him. So I mean, in so many cases, I mean, I would say the majority of them, the people that come back, they come back different. You know, they come back with they don't necessarily have psychic abilities and stuff like that, but they're more in tune to things going on around them. They're more sensitive to things. They're more appreciative for the gift of life, and they bring back a new perspective. Like in Joe's case here, you know, he ended up calling his loved ones to tell them how much he loved them and how short life is. I mean, that's a stark contrast from the, you know, 15 or 20 minutes before, when life wasn't worth living and he took those pills, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a dramatic turn in a short amount of time. So there's something that changes you when you have this experience. So that's Joe's story. Thanks, Joe, for submitting that. Of course, we have plenty more near-death experience content coming this week, because this is Near-Death Experience Week. So I hope you tune into that. And if you have any effed up stories of your own on the paranormal, be certain to get that to us, which you can do on our official website. It's effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. We'll get it on the website, and we'll get it into a podcast. And with that said, thank you, everybody, for listening.
Have a great night.